She won most talkative in high school, and she has been running her mouth ever since. Welcome to the Lisa Fisher Said podcast with your host, Lisa Fisher.
So this is what we do. We start talking to the people who are thought leaders when it comes to your health and food. And Dr. Wiedeman, that's how you came to the carnivore diet, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I had a rough road of myself dealing with weight issues my whole life, as many of us have. And I had overweight parents, overweight brother. I struggled, I guess by the time I was, maybe 4th, 5th grade, realizing I was chubby and I was wearing the husky size from the Sears.
Wait. And that was before it was culturally acceptable and normal.
Yeah, there was no normality about
You were the only chubby kid probably in 4th or 5th grade.
Well, you get teased, and I wasn't obese by any means.
But just chubby.
Chubby.
Yeah.
I wore the husky and the Sears sizing. Yep. And so that led me, through the whole thing of just trying to figure out how do I not be chubby, and as a child, and then it kind of just segued into started gymnastics, and then I was like, wow, I cannot be chubby and do gymnastics.
Right.
And then it started falling into just a little tinge of over restricting food and having problems with that. And then just going crazy because I didn't realize it at the time, but I was addicted to carbs and sugar and processed food. And I totally didn't understand it. I couldn't understand why I couldn't have one helping of lasagna or one helping of mac and cheese. I wanted 2 or 3. And then, I'd keep going back in the cookies, and just kind of from what I hear now I've been coaching for about a dozen years of people who suffer similar food addiction and not realizing that is actually what you had. But I, for many, many years, struggled. You try to do every diet, from the cabbage soup diet to trying to look up what this Slim Fast thing is, and, reading about all sorts of different things, and just from one thing to another, nothing calmed down the fact that I actually had an eating disorder. I just wanted to eat food, and sugary food, bread, pasta, cookies, ice cream.
So you're putting that under the eating disorder umbrella then? Your desire for those things? It is.
It is. I mean, when you look, you could just, walk in it down any street and see the people waddling. They have an eating disorder. I'm sorry, they're not just lazy people who eat too much.
Right, I agree.
There's an actual addiction to this, and to different degrees. Some people who are alcoholics, they might be, there's far extremes of alcoholism too. There's people who drink 2-3 glasses of wine every single night and don't want to miss it and can't miss it and get cranky if they miss it. That's an alcoholic too. And so all the way to the far extremes of it, right? But food addiction is rampant because there's food addiction specialists, experts that are hired full-time on staff at these large food companies. And their whole purpose is to make the food as addictive as possible by making the exact right combination of salt, sugar, and fat, which, carbs and fat are not natural in on Earth, and as a natural food. It's not a natural combination. And it fires up the dopamine in the brain, and it fires up a lot of different chemical reactions. And from the studies that are out there, it's 8 times more addictive than cocaine. Sugar is. They've done studies putting the mice in the cage and getting them addicted to the sugar, and then the cocaine, and then the mice just keep going to the sugar and ignore the cocaine. They've got them addicted first on that, and then once sugar's introduced, they keep going right to the sugar. So this is a serious thing, and it's not out there as an addiction, and it's not out there in the world to where people actually realize it, and that's why it's so difficult to overcome it. It's so difficult. Why? Because when you're addicted to any other thing, heroin, cocaine, alcohol, cigarettes, and people know that you are in recovery from it, nobody goes up to you and says, Oh, you only live once. Why don't you have a shot?
Right.
Let's just have one shot.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, you only live, oh, you know what? Oh, this cigarette, man, this thing, have you ever tried these? Like, nobody does that. But with food, it's totally different. Everybody's, first of all, they think you're insane, for actually restricting yourself from carbohydrates and sugar. They're like,
refusing.
that's not healthy.
Yeah.
How do you think that's healthy?
Yeah, your cholesterol is going to go up. I just heard that today at lunch when I had my double hamburger patty with no sides, no nothing. They're like,
right.
we'll substitute that for a salad. We'll put fruit. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'll have the two meat patties. Usually I even ask for fried eggs on top, but I did today because I think we're busy talking. So do the food companies push this hyperpalatability? We know what that is. We know the definition for that. It's the extreme use, a mix of carbs and fats. And so you get the dopamine hit. What goes up must come down. So after you've had the dopamine hit and then you come down, then you start back over, don't you?
Yeah, and then you're in a downer. And, for people, it's interesting. Addictions in general, people are seeking comfort and they're trying to fill a void, right? And that's why we use substances. And when you go to something for whether you've got stress, anxiety, anger, boredom, there's so many different reasons why people will turn to their favorite friend, the food binge. And it's, it's one of those things where people start doing it in secrecy. And they don't want people to, they don't want anybody to watch them binge on food. And it's a very serious thing. And a lot of people don't talk about it. And a lot of people don't actually realize that it is a true addiction. But and then, if you try to tell people, if when it's really interesting when like just what you said, people will say that to me as far as, well, you might feel good now, but wait till you have a heart attack in 5 years.
Right.
And to that I say, well, you know what? I could name 4 cardiologists right now that eat this way, and I'm pretty sure they don't take their heart health lightly. Neither do I.
Right.
And I've looked into this, and I have an advantage. I mean, I've been an optometric physician for over 30 years. I have the advantage of being a medical professional, so people don't quickly, maybe they'll say it behind my back, but they don't to my face denounce what I'm doing. But you know what? I tell people, you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to explain all the amount of research that you've done into figuring out what's the healthiest for you. You don't owe anybody an explanation. And for that matter, I think really what it comes down to is, for the most part, people have their opinion, and they don't there's cognitive dissonance because we are brainwashed by the media.
For sure.
You got to eat grains, you got to have fiber. I go, really? I haven't had fiber in 13 and a half years now.
That is shocking. When Dr. Paul Saladino in his book, The Carnivore Code, says you don't need fiber, and then he had some research, and I can't remember if Dr. Fung or somebody else did. I was just reading it. Why have we been duped then on this fiber push?
Yeah, it's interesting. And a lot of it comes down to these little studies that might have gotten cherry picked, just like Ansel Keys. Ansel Keys was the big culprit way back with the saturated fat causing heart disease
and
hypothesis.
Before that, remember, he did the Minnesota starvation experiment where he had human guinea pigs, conscientious objectors, who were cutting off their own limbs because of the extreme hunger, and he just said tisk tisk and wanted to use that. In fact, he pushed the calories in, calories out after that. Flawed science.
Yeah. So it's very difficult, and it's an interesting journey. I mean, now at least there's been this big keto explosion, so it's more known. And then there was Atkins and low carb.
Yeah,
and
that's
keto.
true. Those were
so it's
keto. Atkins was keto, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, Atkins, actually, the first 2 weeks of Atkins, he has what's called induction.
Yeah.
And induction was really, in his terms, I believe it was under 20 grams of carbs. And most people through the first 2 weeks basically did carnivore, which, is basically, meat, eggs, and, bacon, butter, water,
All the good stuff, right?
all the
Salt.
good stuff, right?
Right.
And then with Atkins, though, you're then allowed to, as you get close to your goal, you're climbing the carb ladder. And there's so many people, I don't know if you've run into, where people say, oh yeah, I did that Atkins years ago. Yeah, it worked great. I lost a ton of weight, but I
couldn't
gained
keep
it all
off.
back.
Right.
Right? Well, why? Because you went back to the carbs, and then as soon as you get a taste of the bread and the pizza and the pasta and the ice cream, all of a sudden you're down in the ditch. And people are not realizing it. The reason is because you're actually addicted to it. And that's my I kind of make this point with the whole keto movement. I think it's awesome because a lot of people have cleaned up a large percentage of their diet with the keto movement, with eliminating processed foods and eliminating sugar and grains. But there's a side of it where it kind of got lost, where business and money came into it,
sure.
and companies that are now, all you see as soon as you walk in a store, Costco, grocery store, it's keto granola,
And it's
keto
crap.
bread,
It's
and
crap.
and it's all garbage.
It's all garbage.
And people are hooked on, guess what? Artificial sweeteners.
Yeah.
Because that's what's allowed in there. The stevia, the monk fruit. I tell people, get it out of your diet. Do not touch that stuff. Why? Because it keeps you addicted to the taste of sweet. It really, truly does. And if you really want to get free of cravings and free of binging and free of that draw to constantly eat that, you have to eliminate it. There's no moderation of that. It has to be abstinence.
So you were talking about being down in the ditch, and a lot of times we think about that as the weight regain. But I also think too, someone like me who's still fairly new. This is September, we're recording this. I started July the 18th. Listened to his book, Carnivore Code, driving on a long trip with my husband, and our eyes popped out of our heads. But with that, we were for a while doing a little treat meal where we would have something on Saturday night that had either wheat in it or a grain, right? Girl, I tell you, after that chip and dip I had the other night, I had such a headache afterwards. The ditch now for me isn't the fact that I want it again, because I don't. The ditch for me now is I feel so bad after having it that I'm trying to be a grown up and say it's really not worth it. Did you ever feel that way if you had something that was on the forbidden list?
So what happens is, when you're into this and you're feeling good, and then you're in a situation where everybody's having something, or you're invited somewhere and they're serving lasagna and garlic bread, and it's like, well, now what do I do? I can't have it, but boy, do I want it. And then you make an excuse to have it instead of saying, you know what, I'm really kind of full, or my stomach just doesn't feel right, but I love to just sit and enjoy your company. Nobody has control but you of what you pass through your lips, right? But in going back to what you just said, I think the lucky ones, like you, had a reaction, a headache, a GI issue, or something happened when you go back to the food.
Yeah.
The other ones, not so lucky, they're like, oh, dang, that was good. And then, well, I had a cheat day. Let me have a cheat weekend. And the cheat weekend turns into the cheat month. And it's like, well, the holidays are coming. I'll just wait until January.
Yeah, it turns excuse after excuse. But isn't it also the rain barrel effect that the corn that was in those corn chips, I hadn't had corn in months, and whatever else, right? A little at a time, that probably, I didn't realize how sensitive I was to these things, because I would say, I don't have celiac. I have all these other autoimmune conditions, but I don't have celiac. I can eat wheat, and there's probably wheat in something I had the other day. But I also wonder too if it's a rain barrel effect, that a little bit chips away, and then one day it's going to, and it's going to be too much.
And all these things, the bottom line is they cause inflammation, and it's cumulative. And that's what I think is one of the very sly, sneaky things about sugar, grains, and seed oils, which are the trifecta that I say absolutely everybody, no matter whether you want to go fully animal-based and fly your freak flag like I do, or you just really want to clean up and be healthy, because there's a lot of information out there that plants have toxins in them. Plants are out there to kill you because plants want to keep themselves alive on Earth and not be eaten. So
isn't that a whole interesting?
Yeah, they have a chemical defense mechanism. Yeah. It's really interesting. But I think what happens is there's not an immediate penalty for eating all this trash garbage. We call it the SAD, the standard American diet, right? The SAD diet, and I like to call it the standard atrocious diet.
Yes.
And there's that's why that's why our society has gotten sicker and fatter. Is that there isn't an immediate penalty. With heroin, you can overdose and kill yourself pretty quickly. With alcohol, you could crash your car or you could black out, get in an accident. There's penalties, and there's people around you that will call you out on this behavior. But with food, no, people are laughing and eating it with you.
Yeah, and think you're crazy if you're not.
Exactly. And the inflammation that happens over time, sometimes it hits people as early as their 20s, and if they're lucky, they get Crohn's or IBS or colitis or arthritis, and it drives them to seek an answer if they're lucky. Or the other thing is the lucky ones get really fat, because those people are also driven to find an answer, because they're like, man, I don't want to look like this or feel like this, and this is horrible. So those people are driven. But the other ones who are not so lucky keep going and keep eating the SAD, and eventually, once they hit 40s, 50s, the old, oh, don't get old, this is what happens when you get old kind of thing. No. This is because you've been eating crap for 30 years. Yeah. And it's finally, the inflammation has built up enough that now it's expressing itself as cancer, dementia, arthritis, hypertension, diabetes,
PCOS, all the things.
PCOS.
So what was
psoriasis?
Your aha moment said, I've got to do something. I have a genetic predisposition for this. I'm going to break the cycle. That's what we are. We're cycle breakers, right?
Yeah,
so
I couldn't.
What was your first relief? But what did the scale do? And then what was your first physical relief? Not just that you weren't in size 14s anymore, you were in size 6s, but like for me, just getting off plants, my hip bursitis gone. And I've been chasing chiropractors and physical therapists for a year. All I need to do is remove plants, and I feel I'm back to normal.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I had a 30-year horrible road of dealing with an eating disorder, and I couldn't get out from under myself. Here I am. I was going to grad school to become a doctor, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm a smart, intelligent woman here.
Why can't I figure this out?
Why can't I figure this out? Right. And I struggled. And it wasn't until I, thank God for the internet, and I was up, at midnight surfing the web, just seeking an answer. And I happened upon the forum Zeroing In on Health that was run by Charles Washington. It was a group of people who had gotten kicked off of the low-carb Jimmy Moore forum, Living La Low Carb Vita,
yes,
whatever.
With that crazy guy, that Jimmy Moore, yes.
Jimmy Moore, yep. Yeah. And so this group of people, Charles Washington and this group of people had a thread there, because they all were like, gosh, we were successful with Atkins induction, and I'm just going to not stop Atkins induction and keep going. And then they started reading, Owsley Stanley readings. He had been doing carnivore for like 30, 40 years. Then reading Fat of the Land, the Stephenson, and Not by Bread Alone. And there's so much literature that actually way back then, this is 2009, that was available to start really researching and understanding this. And they got kicked off, and so because it wasn't low carb.
There was shadow banning even before it was cool to shadow ban, or
exactly
to censor people on tech. We thought that was just an election. No, it's any thought. Listen to this, people. It's any thought process that doesn't fall in line with status quo, you're banned.
Done.
Now think about that just a minute. Anything you follow, if it's banned, then you ought to go harder for it, because there must be truth.
Well, that's what I say to people. I say, do the opposite. I said, they tell you to slather on sunscreen, right?
Please,
I'm like,
right.
that means do not use sunscreen. That stuff is toxic chemicals.
Oh, totally.
Our bodies need the sun. We need to get sun in our eyes. We need sun on our skin.
Well, wait a minute. Looking at you, people who aren't watching YouTube, beautiful blonde hair, blue eyes. Weren't you told all your... See, I'm protected. My Russian Jewish heritage, I am protected from skin cancer, to some extent. But you probably wore that crap for years.
Yeah, because that, of course, you're supposed to put sunscreen on, and yeah, so I'm just in the whole trend of what we were saying of do the opposite of what we're told. You're told to eat margarine and avoid butter, and you're told to not eat red meat or saturated fat. It's bad for your heart. Nope, actually, that's about all I eat. Yeah. Okay, that's literally about all I eat. Like 90% of my diet is beef and lamb, sausage, bacon, eggs. That's a pork belly. that's
we
pretty
need to
much
discuss pork belly. I just got some the other day at Costco because they had it. It looks like fat bacon. So I put it in the oven for about 50 minutes, about 25 minutes each side. I put some spices on it. It didn't change my life. What am I doing wrong?
All right, Lisa, it's your lucky day because at 9 a.m. this morning, I just published a new YouTube video with my absolute favorite pork belly method, and you're going to go crazy over it.
Okay.
Crazy.
We will put that
amazing.
in the show notes.
Yes, it's called the hive cut pork belly method. And
okay.
You can do it I do it in the air fryer. You can do it in a regular oven, and
all right.
It's phenomenal.
So is it crispy? What's my goal? What's the end game? Crisp, crunch?
Well, so for me, yeah, and you'll see as soon as you click on this video, you will see and witness what this stuff looks like. It's amazing. It's crunchy and crispy, but
almost candy. Does it caramelize?
No, not like that. No, but it gets a nice crunch and it's nice and fatty because you really want the fat. I eat about 80% of my diet is fat and 20% protein. So I really go for fatty ribeye, fatty pork belly.
So you try to eat the fat then when you
absolutely
after you sear it in this, because I do a sous vide. In fact, I did my sous vide, and after we hang up, I will go down to my kitchen and get my iron skillet and my butter and sear on both sides. But then when I cut off the fat and slice it, you're saying you take that, you chew it and eat it?
Yeah, or you can throw it in a pan and fry it up in some butter. Okay. Or you don't even really need butter, but it tastes really good fried up in a little extra butter, and crisp it up. If it grosses you out to eat it,
I'm tough.
Just trimmed off.
I'm tough. Now, so a Southern thing is the fried pork rinds that we get in restaurants, and I have a dealer for everything. I have a dealer for my beef. I have a dealer for my butter. I have a dealer for my raw yogurt. I mean, I need a pager number, really. Like,
I wish I was down in Louisiana about 5 or 6 years ago, and I was in my glory with these fresh pork rind things that's
it. So
because up here the pork rinds are what you get in a bag, and they're like
no, they're horrible. Those taste terrible. These I put in lard, and they're delicious. So pork on pork.
So when you purchase them, though, they're already fried and crisped?
No, I get them from a restaurant supply company. But I don't know. I don't know if the public can do that. So I have my dealer who gets it for me, and they look like little Cinnamon Toast Crunch if we're talking carbs and sugar.
Right.
They're little bitty squares, and you put them in the lard that's 350 degrees. I use my candy thermometer.
And then they plump up, right?
In about 24 seconds. And then you take the scoop, put them out, and all the salt and pepper that you want, and your teeth break. But it's worth it because they crunch. Sometimes they don't crunch great and there's a little hard spot, but girl, they are so good. And you could put your ground beef on that. And do you do any dairy?
Yeah, I do because I tolerate it. Ultimately, do I feel dairy is not ideal? Yeah, that's kind of my thought process. But boy, I have a love-hate relationship with it because it's hard for me to get rid of it. But it can be inflammatory in many people.
How do you know
And-
if it is? Because I said that wheat didn't bother me until I got off it and I had it, but I've not noticed anything if I remove dairy and reintroduce it. I don't notice inflammation. Do you think and I am a Hashimoto's patient.
Yeah.
Do you think I'm in the clear?
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, you're still fairly new to this. I would still ride it out at least 6 months solid and get your feet firmly planted in this whole way of eating. And then at that point, if, because you can reverse and heal Hashimoto's on this.
Now I actually have reversed my high antibody count, but I attributed that to all the sunshine I get now. My vitamin D is finally at 55, and the higher your vitamin D is, the lower your antibodies get. If your C-reactive protein's low, my fasting insulin, long-time intermittent faster. So I've worked real hard, but a lot of Hashimoto's patients there's a don't list, and theirs is often wheat products and dairy and eggs. And see, I love eggs. Eggs don't bother me at all.
Yeah, and the egg thing for a lot of people, and some of this comes down to the whole leaky gut and microbiome issues that we've ruined over decades of treating our bodies like garbage cans.
Yeah.
So we have developed this leaky gut, which then ultimately starts developing into all of these autoimmune issues. But so most people, I mean, some people have to eliminate the whites, and they can do fine with the yolk. And then some people can eat ghee, but not butter, if you're removing the milk proteins. But in general, the other downside of dairy is that there are casomorphines in cheese, and hear the word, it can be very addictive to some people. And sometimes it's hard to stop. And boy, can I fry up some cheese and eat that. It's just amazing. The halloumi, or the bread cheese, they call it. And so there's that issue. And as far as like immediate reactions for some people who do react to dairy, it's typically like a sinus or postnasal thing, or acne.
Got it.
And that's an outward sign, like, you really don't tolerate dairy. But that's not to say that, once you get fully solid into this, you should do a 6-month experiment and say, I'm not eating dairy. And that's really hard for most people because they want to put cream in their coffee. Yeah. And for the most part, you can do dairy-free, but keep butter in, because butter is really kind of a different category than cream in your coffee. A lot of people say that. Yeah, cream in the coffee and cheese, but I still keep cheese somewhat in. I have crumbled blue cheese that sometimes I will add to my ground beef, or when I'm at a restaurant, I'll get a blue cheese and bacon burger. I kind of go to heck with myself. Wow, I'm getting cheese.
Woo! Living on the edge.
Yeah, but I try to not have a full brick of cheese in my refrigerator because I can.
You would eat it.
It keeps calling my name.
Morphine. Now, go back to your weight loss, recognizing, because step 1, obviously, is recognizing you have the problem. You have the problem. Then people want to know, but how much weight did she lose?
Yeah, well, so when you have an eating disorder, you can really hide all of your binges very well.
Yeah.
So, so I don't have those amazing before and after Transformation Tuesday pictures that people post on social media.
But this changed your mindset.
Oh my gosh, I can tell you, eating disorders are really difficult, and it was because I couldn't stop binging on food, and that's the problem. But, once I found that group, and I was reading in there the forum of these 2 women who were back and forth saying, yeah, I'm a sugar addict, I'm a food addict. And once I came to this, I was able to live a normal life. I was able to get rid of the cravings. And yeah, and that changed my life. It was freedom. March 9th of 2009. Well, I'll never forget it. And
congratulations.
Yeah, and it's been a very rewarding journey for me, because I'm just passionate now to try to spread the word and help as many people as I can, because I know how horrible it is to be in the grips of sugar and carb and food addiction.
So what were your first meals? Did you start with a T-bone steak and butter and bacon?
Yeah, you know what? Back then, it was emphasized to eat fatty meat, You weren't supposed to eat boneless, skinless chicken breast, and just
Which are really hard. If you think about it, it is flavorless, boneless, skinless chicken breast. We just didn't know it because it was maligned, and now we realize chicken thighs, I don't ever eat them, but they would be the better of the two because fat has flavor.
Right. Yeah, no, so I pretty much, I specifically remember, now this is 13 years ago, but I was a period of time where I wasn't really hungry in the morning, so I just didn't eat because that's what we always said. Don't eat if you're not hungry. Yeah. And then I would get hungry around, 10, 11, 12. I'd eat a porterhouse, and then I'd get hungry around 5, 6, and I'd eat another porterhouse. And boy, I just dropped to a lean, awesome body weight. Like I just felt amazing. I felt like I was on top of the world. And honestly, Lisa, I wanted to, at that point, scream it from the rooftops. I wanted to but then I realized nobody really wants to listen because everybody wants to eat their crap,
that's
and
you're not point.
You're not really popular but I could then understand, I figured out very quickly who genuinely was hurting inside and wanted an answer for themselves and wanted to listen. And then I would, I'd be the hand there to say, look, this is what you can do. And this is amazing. And you will change your life. And you will look back and say, oh my gosh, if I had only found this. And I think you'll probably agree, Lisa, because I said the same thing when I was 44, when I found this, right? So I said, oh my God, if I had found this when I was 20, because I had already suffered from about the time I was about 14 years old, right? So I was just so...
Now, were you PCOS or any other metabolic syndromes?
No, I was probably borderline diabetic, at that point. But I was fortunate that I didn't have any outward expressed... I will say, though, from my years of garbage can eating, treating myself like a garbage can, I'll say, I definitely had some sort of either IBS or celiac, or I would get a little bit of a distended stomach, a bloat, a pain that would last for a few hours, and I could figure out what I ate, it was that kind of thing. So I definitely had some sort of gut issues going on, and it really, the hard thing about this is really, I think, the crux of this, because you could say, you and I and Saladino and Sean Baker and Kelly Hogan, all the people who are really prominent and, in this world of bringing the truth out of what we should be eating, instead of we won't get into politics, but they want the masses, to be mush. The masters and the elite eat meat, and they want the masses to eat cereal and grain and plants and bugs and you name it, right? But the big issue is, forget about all that. How about just people wanting to eat and drink the brownies and the apple pie a la mode and the pecan pie and the ice cream and the pizza and everything? People love it and want to eat it, right? So you have to be motivated in a big way. And I say, and I know Christy Code Red Nichols is this one who I heard this term. You have to have the why that makes you cry to really do this. Because, realistically, when you say to somebody, like, I eat meat, eggs, a little bit of seafood if it's served somewhere or I have it. It's not a big part of my diet, but basically meat and eggs, a little bit of cheese, lots of butter, is my diet, right? And they're like, oh my God, I could never do that. What do you mean? I love salad. I love vegetables. But no. You know what? It's not so much the salad and the vegetables that you really love. It's the salad dressing that actually has sugar in it, and soybean oil, which is a seed oil, which is toxic right there. And then, what else do you not want to give up? Well, pizza and nachos and, whatever, anything and everything, calamari at the restaurant, whatever it is. People don't want to give up their food because it's enjoyable and they're addicted to it without actually saying it and knowing it. So who's really going to do this? unless you have your own personal, like for you, from what I'm learning about you, it's Hashimoto's, a achy hip. It's like
That's
you
right.
have to get to that point where you're like, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And then, when people say to me, oh, you can't have that, can you? And I say, no, I can have that. If we're at a birthday and there's birthday cake, right? You can't have that, can you? And I go, no, I can have it. I just choose not to. It doesn't make me feel good. And, so it really has to come down to this really inner desire that you've researched enough to truly know that this is the way to health and longevity. And without our health, we have nothing. And so many people will say, oh, well, when you hit your 70s and 80s, it's just, this is what happened. I'm like, no, I'm going to be hiking mountains, hopefully when I'm 90,
Right.
because I am not eating these inflammatory foods. And, seed oils being the top of the list. And I know we touched on that a little bit.
Well, let's go into seed oils because before we got started, we just were kind of gabbing. And then I said, nope, hold that thought for when we start recording. And that is how. So when I went to lunch today with my friend at a good restaurant and had the double cheeseburger patty, I assume they cook it on a griddle and they're using the animal fat that's been there. But you're saying they may incorporate toxic seed oils into their cooking.
Yeah. So restaurants are just an absolute number one, culprit of this because it's cheap. So aside from the food industry, aside from the big food conglomerate companies putting it in everything, why? Because it makes it shelf stable. It's cheap, so it lessens the cost of things, right? And it also adds to the addictive quality of it. So there's a
it does?
Because it's the fat, the salt, and the sugar together. Uh-huh. So now the restaurants took to using it because basically because it's cheap, okay? It's flavorless because it goes through like an 8-stage chemical process to remove the odor, to remove the cloudy color, and to remove any off flavor. So it goes through hexane and oh my God, like if you can go on YouTube and watch the process that they do to make corn oil, soybean oil, canola oil. It's all very similar.
And there's a little heart on it. It says heart healthy. It's alive.
But so there's it's horrible what it goes through, and it's toxic. And before I add to that, as far as the restaurants using it, let me just say, because I've really delved deep into this, because being an eye doctor, I have a lot of patients that have macular degeneration, and
vision is definitely affected by high insulin levels.
Yes. And so, but macular degeneration in particular is so, I've been in practice 30 years. 30 years ago, it wasn't the way it is now even. Like I've noticed a huge increase. And there's 1 in 3 people over the age of 75 have at least the starts of macular degeneration.
And remind me what that one is, because I don't know eye stuff.
Macular degeneration. Macula is that spot in our eye where our central 20/20 vision is. When we want to see something, we point our macula at it. We have to look at it with our macula. And macular degeneration is a devastating eye disease, and there's a dry form and a wet form, but they can both lead to significant vision loss. And so there's a Dr. Chris Knobbe, he's an ophthalmologist who it's Knobbe, and you can put a link to his website because I'm sure you'll get some commentary, because there's so many. Even 1 in 11 people over the age of 65 has macular degeneration. So this is very prominent. But so www.cureamd, cureamd.org is his website. He spent 8 years doing research. He pretty much gave up his clinical practice because he was so passionate about trying to look at this whole thing. And he is 100% convinced that it was back in 1910 when Crisco and margarine and these seed oils were introduced into our food system, and they significantly got more and more and more into our food system. Now you cannot basically, I tell people, don't eat anything that comes in a box, a bag, a bottle, or a jar.
Or with a barcode. Dr. Wiedeman says if it has a barcode too.
Yeah, pretty much, because you just want to eat, basically, I say meat and eggs, fatty meat and eggs is where it's at. But so it's pervasive. They put it in everything because of the shelf life and because of making it cheaper.
Well, those keto products that are at Costco, everyone thinks they're so holy. And they've got 19 ingredients. One of them is often. You have to look, but you'll see it's
sunflower
one of them.
oil.
Yeah, sunflower oil.
Or
right.
I'll say high oleic sunflower oil. And then people think, oh, well, that must be healthy. It's sunflower and it's high oleic. Like, people don't have any idea. Oil does not belong in our body. It just does not. There's nothing natural about oil.
Oh, that's a
oil
good way
has
to
to be
put that.
manufactured. Okay. Yeah. Oil is not something you pick up off the ground or off a tree.
Except for olive oil. Right?
Well, now that still has to be pressed out of the olive. Now, let me go into the olive oil situation, because that's very common for somebody to say that. Well, what about olive oil? Olive oil's healthy, right? Well, they have done some incognito testing and found 80% of olive oil is adulterated with garbage to make it cheaper. Canola oil is cut into the olive oil. It's not written on the label.
Oh, my.
I don't know whether it's the mafia involved or who's involved in it, but
the olive mafia. Right.
I don't trust any oil whatsoever. Zero.
No coconut oil, then no avocado oil.
No, so coconut oil and avocado oil are, again,
Plants.
it's in the category with olive oil. People are like, well, what about coconut and avocado? Well, they actually had an avocado oil where there was zero avocado oil in it, and it was all canola oil or whatever the crap oil.
We've been duped.
We have been so duped.
So you do butter, ghee, lard.
Butter, yeah, bacon fat, bacon
fat.
trimmings, tallow. There's a great Wagyu beef tallow, or you can get right on Amazon. That's really. But I tell people because most people eat salads, so they have. Well, what am I going to put on my salad if I can't eat oil, right? Well, I'm like, don't eat salad. Leaves are the most toxic part of a plant, because that's the part they're trying to...
Aren't you glad that salads are in your rearview mirror and we don't have to go to restaurants and order them anymore?
No, I'm so glad. I'm so glad I don't have to eat any of that.
I used to chew and chew and chew and chew. And then I'd get a piece of steak that was about that big, and they would always put the worst piece of steak on it. Now it's nice just to say, can I have a hamburger with 2 eggs on it?
Yeah, exactly. So another thing about the seed oils is, if anybody listening says, oh, okay, I'm going to make sure I look at the labels and not have seed oils anymore, right? Well, okay, that's awesome. That's an awesome first step. And just remember, if you stop eating any drop of seed oil today, today's your hard line in the sand, you stop. Seed oils have a 680-day half-life. That means if you stop today, 680 days from now, half of it that's stored in your body fat.
Are you kidding me?
In the cells of the walls of your cells, half of it is still there 680 days from now.
Way.
Okay, and then another 680 days goes by, and then you're down to a quarter of what you've got stored up in your body, because this isn't just oil that just you eat and you crap it out. Like, this stuff.
Why is that? How is that humanly possible?
I know, it's because the cell wall is made of lipid. It's a fat, and so it absorbs into it. And that is why it's now thought that they are the culprit of not just of heart disease, diabetes, dementia, Alzheimer's, anxiety, depression. It absorbs. Our brain is very fatty. This stuff is absorbing, and it's very inflammatory. These oils in our bodies are foreign and inflammatory.
Okay, then why can't we have an uprising like we did with tobacco, and enough people finally stomped their size 10 Jimmy Choos and said, I'm not having it. Why hadn't...
Well, you know why though? But here's the uprising that actually happened years ago. Let's take the instance of McDonald's. McDonald's used to fry their French fries a long time ago in beef tallow, which
40
is
years
really
ago.
healthy, really healthy.
Yeah.
Beef tallow, okay?
Yeah.
You know where the uprising came? There was a gentleman who had a heart attack, and then I believe he was reading into the Ansel Keys saturated fat thing, and he was responsible for getting the entire McDonald's chain to change it to healthy vegetable oil. Okay? And then it just snowballs from there because then, well, this is cheaper and this is this and that. I will say, and then, so let's talk just what we touched on before we hit the record button about the restaurant thing. Because people are like, okay, so I'm going to read the labels. I'm not going to buy anything with the oils, right? And then you got to remember though, because it's in everything, even a loaf of bread, and chips and everything, right? So you go to a restaurant, okay, and you think, okay, I'm going to eat this fatty meat, egg, healthy diet that we're talking about, right? And I'm going to order chicken wings but I'm going to make sure they're not breaded because, of course, we don't want the breading. And I'm going to have naked chicken wings, right? So the chicken wings come and you think you're all well and good. Well, guess what? Those chicken wings were deep fried in oil back there in the kitchen, okay? Along with the French fries and the calamari and the fried shrimp, right? Everything. Now, not only that, because then you could say, okay, oh, wait, let me just back up to the chicken wing thing, though, because I happen to love chicken wings. And so you can make them yourself, just season and put them in the air fryer or in the oven. They're awesome. But if you're out, Buffalo Wild Wings, that national chain, fries their chicken wings in beef tallow. And I have called and confirmed that. Yep.
No way.
Yeah. All the other chains, Wingstop, nope, oil.
But then the oils they serve it with are poison.
And Buffalo Wild Wings, you don't want to get the ranch or the Parmesan garlic
just
gooey
bring
stuff.
them home and make your own oil.
Yes, exactly. Or just eat them, or with the dry spice. They have nice little salt, vinegar, pepper, dry spice that you can sprinkle on there. But yeah, so that's just a little tip I like to give people with that. But like people who think that, I'm going to order my healthy salmon, and I'm telling you, I've videoed it many times and I've spoken to chefs, but I've been at a place, sometimes my friends and I will sit at the bar and eat dinner and I've got a direct line into the kitchen. I watch them pick up that squirt bottle and squirt it in the pan that they're cooking your healthy salmon in. These seed oils that are toxic, okay? And you think you go out to breakfast, and I'm with my friends. Well, okay, I'm going to get the meat lovers omelet, right? It's got bacon, sausage, and ham, and I'm ordering the meat lovers omelet. Okay, well, and I'm going to say no potatoes, no toast, no thank you. I do not want the fruit that you're offering either. I appreciate it. Just bring some extra butter and a side of bacon, and I'm good. But here's the thing. I say, please, you have to let them know I'm allergic to oil. Use that allergy word because that'll hit it. I'm allergic to oil. Can you make sure that they have nothing on the grill or the pan that they cook my omelet in? They can use plenty of butter, but please no oil. And they will, sometimes they'll actually come back and say, you know what, the grill has had the oil on it, so they're afraid. I go, that's okay, just wipe the grill. I'm like, because I'm not like really fanatic about it, right? Just wipe the grill and use butter, it's fine. But it's really, and you could say, well, now you're going overboard. No. But I'm like, you know what?
I don't think so.
I'm not. My dad was practically blind from macular degeneration. He just passed last week. Of
my
cancer.
Gosh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, cancer, diabetes, Parkinson's,
all the things,
macular degeneration, and obese. And I say I'm on a mission because my parents didn't want to listen to me. Yeah. This wacky daughter that eats only meat, right? And if only they had known and only had listened, but I say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him carnivore.
That's exactly right.
You have to have your why that makes you cry.
Yeah,
and he did at the end. I'm going to say 2 months prior to his death, he was very concerned that his vision was significantly worsening on a daily basis, as he explained to me. Now what can I do? Well, Dad, same thing I told you 10 years ago. Yeah. Stop eating sugars, grains, and seed oils, But it's,
so you would
hard.
Say those are the three biggest. Those are the three offenders.
That's the three biggest things, and then that would make a huge change in the majority of people's health. And if you can't wrap your brain around the cognitive dissonance that you have regarding fruits and vegetables that everybody knows, they tell you to eat 7 to 9 servings of. Right, I'm going to tell you, I've had 0 fruits and 0 vegetables for 13 and a half years.
I love it.
And I am the picture of health. Okay. My blood work's perfect. My triglycerides are perfect. I've eaten basically fatty red meat, butter, bacon, eggs for 13 and a half years. My blood work is perfect. My blood pressure's perfect. I do cartwheels on the beach. I'm 57, had 2 children. I can still wear a bikini. So
I love it.
How's your diet working for you?
Yeah, that's exactly
that's
right.
when people come at me with like, oh, are you still doing that meat thing? I go, yeah, are you still doing that vegetarian thing?
I know. I heard Asperger, somebody just recently on a podcast, say that the biggest converts recently, they've had this influx of converts to carnivore, and it's the former vegans who, after he has a window of like, the first 3 years they do feel good because they've cut out the standard American
garbage.
diet. So
right.
yeah, I understand that. And then they're still kind of riding the crest of this honeymoon. And then they wake up at 5 years, their hair's thin. They might have acne. Their menopause is for women is atrocious because how valuable these protein is for us to get through our perimenopause and menopause.
And fat because fat is so important to our hormones. And that's the other thing. I mean, I'm going to say I sailed through menopause from about 54 to 56. There's always that like period of it. And I had no issues whatsoever. And, I have the advantage that I had, I guess 11, 12 years behind me of eating really healthy, eliminating seed oils and sugar and grains and plants and fruit. Like,
what do you do for your birthday treat?
I put candles in a big ribeye.
I'd love to see that picture.
I'll send it to you.
I love it. Oh, I wish you would. Send it to Darren, my producer. I'll use that as your photo for
I'll send you some pictures. I'll send you some pictures. But yeah, no, there's other things. You can make a carnivore ice cream with just heavy whipping cream and egg yolks. Yeah. And, put some vanilla bean pod in there.
So do you make your own mayonnaise?
You know what?
Or just eliminate it?
There's some great recipes, and I'm actually going to do a YouTube video on sauces because everybody misses their sauces. Yeah. They're like, what do you eat with this? What do you eat with that? Why? And so there's a butter mayonnaise you can make that's delicious. There's a bacon fat mayonnaise that's really good. But in answer to your question, what I say is I have no use for mayonnaise.
Yeah, I just don't. I like deviled eggs. And sometimes I do the fancy truffle oil with my deviled eggs. And so I still use, because the other stuff isn't good.
Yeah, no. So here's something to think about that's absolutely delicious when making deviled eggs. And you might first think, oh, God, really? Just like room temperature softened butter and a little bit of mustard. And mash the yolks in that, and that's your deviled egg. It's delicious, and you can even do a little bit of bacon fat, warmed bacon fat, and
because really the mayonnaise is just a binder if you think of it that way.
That's exactly it. Yeah, and the butter with a little bacon fat, and do whatever you can put your. I have a truffle salt that I use, and throw that in there, and it's delicious. Okay. So, yeah. Yeah, there's always ways around. And to me, that's a heck of a lot easier than using the immersion blender and making right.
And
there's some really delicious hollandaise kind of sauce. It's basically, egg yolk. It's really, really good. And, some people really want a sauce. And it's actually an easy, good way to add fat to your meat, too.
Well, let's wrap things up. If someone's listening right now, I've been talking to them about it for a while. But they need another sensible Lisa voice, not just Lisa Fisher saying it. Tell somebody how to get started in carnivore and, just the quick benefits, the elevator pitch benefits.
Yeah. So one thing that I want to say, if anybody listening has anything that I've said has kind of struck a chord as far as like, I keep trying to stop eating the cookies and I keep dipping into it, or I keep, if you do feel like you keep trying to stop eating these quote unquote bad things and you're having a very difficult time, you're not alone. And the best way, I say, addictions love isolation and community is the opposite of addiction. So every week I have 6 hours of different Zoom meetings with some awesome people. And we talk about carnivore and we talk about tips and tricks on avoiding triggers and how to handle social situations, how to handle holidays, how to handle, being at a work event. And it's just really important to know that to get over an addiction, it's so important to get involved in other people, like-minded people that are on the path to health like you are. Yeah. So that's first. The other thing is, some people say like, well, do I do it stepwise? How do I do it? Oh my gosh, do I, you can just rip the Band-Aid off. Yeah. And just, and it's going to take 3 to 4 weeks of your body adjusting. Don't think that this is not for me. I've got diarrhea and my heart is racing a little bit. This must not be for me. You know what? This is for all humans. This is the natural human diet. For millions of years, we hunted animals.
That's right.
And ate the fat and meat and organs out of it.
We did.
Okay, so this is not something that's special about me that I do well on this. This is all humans will thrive. Our bodies are meant to heal. Our bodies are not out to destroy themselves. Okay, so you give it the proper nutrition, you remove the toxins, which in my mind is, obviously what I said, the sugar, the grains, the seed oils, the plants, the vegetables, and the nuts and seeds. People say, oh, aren't nuts healthy? No, they're actually inflammatory.
Yeah, real inflammatory.
They're really not good for you. So, and I know this goes against what, other things that you hear, but
don't believe what you hear. That's what we're saying.
I know.
Do the opposite.
Do the opposite. So how do you jump in? You jump in. You just say, and again, do you have your why that makes you cry?
Yeah,
or are you just, or are you at the point where you're just thinking to yourself, you know what? I can tell certain things are starting to bother me or change, and I do, or I got this 25, 45 pounds that I've always wanted to lose and I can't lose. Any of that, just use it as your point of saying, you know what? I want better for myself. I want the best for myself. There is one trip around the block here. We got one shot at it. You let it go too long. Cancer feeds off of sugar. And cancer is a very metabolically active cell, and it just thrives in sugar. And what is sugar? Pretty much like a potato breaks down into sugar. A carrot breaks down into sugar. Carbohydrates break down into sugar. It's not just stopping the cookies and the ice cream and the cake. That's not it. But you know how many people just walking into like Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks and getting these sugary pumpkin latte with this, they put a squirt of this stuff in. You know what's in that squirt? Nope, you don't know what's in that squirt.
Poison,
it's chemicals.
Right.
You're spending your hard-earned money on chemicals that companies have put together into a box, a bag, a bottle, or a jar, and you're putting it in your body. So, that's why I just say, you know what? Once you know, you should. If this is hitting the chord where you're like, man, this makes a lot of sense. All right, so just do it. Just when you get hungry, just get delicious meat. I love ground beef. I love eggs.
Me too.
I love butter.
Yeah.
I love bacon. I love
cheap.
Pork belly.
Yeah, what I eat is cheap.
It is.
Not
People say,
expensive.
oh, isn't that expensive? No, I don't have to get a tomahawk ribeye when I go out. I can get a, bunless burger, hopefully, bacon, cheddar, and hopefully they'll put a sunny side up egg on top of the burger, and that's a perfect meal. And then I go home, and if I'm still hungry, I can have some more.
That's exactly right. But you're not going to be. You'll be surprised. Your satiety levels will be so high.
As long as you have enough fat. You really, it's amazing how little food you actually need. We just eat way too much volume. So I just say jump in and then start going down the rabbit hole on YouTube. I'm going to be putting out like a whole series of beginner carnivore on my YouTube channel.
Oh, great. I'll link all of that on my the show notes.
I have recipes. I have this great seafood medley where it's like basically shrimp and scallops and whatever you want to throw in there, and butter and heavy cream and bacon, and it's delicious.
Well, I do wish you were passionate about something in your life, so.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
I know. I love it. I love your enthusiasm. All this in the show notes. And everybody get to following, and let's everybody in Arkansas make more pork belly than has ever been made ever because of your YouTube channel. Thank you, Dr. Wiedeman, for being here. Great job.
It's been a pleasure being here. Thanks so much, Lisa.
Thanks for listening to the Lisa Fisher Said podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe and download all the episodes and leave a review, won't you? The Lisa Fisher Said podcast is produced by ClantonCreative.com.